I used to think the worst sound a man could ever hear in an Appalachian night was a bobcat's scream. But that was before the holler breathed my name back at me. I'm speaking these words with hands that won't stop shaking, even though months have passed. If you've come looking for comfort, turn this off now, because all I've got are jagged memories and the stench of something that still stalks the tree line when the moon is thin. The evening started ordinary enough. Early September, daylight dripping off the ridges like honey off a spoon. I had hiked the old logging road above Ash Creek to check my trail cameras. Locals warn tourists about black bears and copperheads, but those things keep their own rules. It's men and things wearing the shape of men you ought to fear. I'm not superstitious. Grew up splitting wood, gutting deer, reading weather off clouds. But I know the mountain keeps secrets the city folk can't pronounce, and that night, it decided to speak one of them through me. The first sign was the silence. Appalachia's forests are never quiet. Even in January, the pines whisper. Yet, as twilight slid between the trunks, all crickets went mute, as though the air itself were holding its breath. I remember stopping mid-step, feeling the hush press against my eardrums like water. That's when the echo called back. Caleb, my name, my birth name, rolled down from the ridge in a rasp I didn't recognize. It wasn't an echo because I hadn't spoken. It sounded like someone dragging my voice across stone, vowels stretched, consonants broken. My blood ran cold, but I forced a laugh, told myself it was a buddy pulling a prank. No one laughed back. An owl should have hooted. Grouse should have thumped. Nothing. Only that thick, aching stillness. I clicked off the safety on my .22 use against bears, but comfort against coyotes. I told myself to keep walking the road, but my boots wouldn't move. The hardwoods crowded closer, barks striped in shadow. Each trunk a doorway to something staring. That's when the smell hit. Wet leather left too long in a creek, mixed with open guts. A deer carcass rotting downwind will gag you. The smell froze the back of my throat. I lifted my shirt over my nose, eyes watering, but the stench crawled through the cotton. Then the leaves behind me rustled. I turned. Nothing there at first. Then a shape unfolded from the undergrowth, tall as a horse, thin as famine. Even now, describing it feels like lying, because my brain keeps trying to swap memories for something. Same, but what step onto the path wore a skin that didn't fit? Patchy, gray, stretched tight like hide on a drum. Its arms dual, long-ended in fingers that tapered to bone. In the face God help me, the face was wearing mine. It was me, but not me. My eyes, but flat and black. My jaw, but slack, like a gutted fish. My beard, but matted with gore. The creature tilted its head, as if testing how human skin feels when you smile. And the sound that crawled out of his throat was the crunch of ice on spring riverbanks. Instinct finally kicked in. I raised the rifle and fired. The crack shattered the silence, but the thing didn't flinch. The slug tore through its chest, and something wet slapped a birch trunk behind it. Yet the creature only tilted its stolen head farther, studying me. With interest, as though pain were a language it was still learning. Then it spoke again. Caleb, help me. My own voice, my exact drawl, pleading. It took a step forward, ankles bending wrong end. I stepped back, tripping on a root. The rifle fell. Before I could grab it, long fingers pinned the barrel to the dirt. That close, I saw the seam's tiny stitches where skin met sinew, like a quilt sewn from hunted people. I gagged. I scrambled backward, palms grinding gravel, heart hammering my ribs. The thing crouched, matching my retreat inch for inch, head bobbing like a raven's. When I finally found my feet, I bolted. Branches slapped my face, darkness swallowing the road. Behind me, I heard bones crack as it lurched into a run gait. Jerky, limbs, too many, or not enough. People ask why I didn't fire again. I could lie and say the magazine jammed, but truth is, I forgot the gun, forgot everything except the rhythm of flight. My lungs burned, and every breath tasted like spoiled blood. The timber opened near the river bluff, moonlight bleaching the rocks. That's where I gambled. I dove off the ledge. It's only 20 feet down, but the river this time of year is shallow, a black ribbon over slick slate. I hit hard, water smashing breath from me, stones biting my knees. Pain flared, sharp as electricity, but I rolled beneath the undercut bank, wedging myself between root and rock. Mud filled my ears, water chilled my bones. Still, I listened for footsteps. They never came. Instead, the creature paced the cliff above, its silhouette carving crooked antlers against the night. It whispered my name softer now, almost coaxing it. Dawn smeared pale gold across the sky. When the sun finally crowned the ridge, the smell faded. Birds resumed their song as if the night had been a shared nightmare. I crawled out, shaking, bloodied, alive. I didn't go to the sheriff. What could I report a shadow wearing my face? Instead, I packed my truck and drove to a motel 2 counties over. Lights on until exhaustion clubbed me into sleep. Sleep didn't save me. Dreams carried the echo. Caleb helped me over endless ridges where nothing cast the right shadow. That was the first night, start of 8 long days that carved the truth of skinwalkers into my marrow. If you think living is safer than dying, you haven't met the thing that hunts Appalachia when the sky runs out of stars. And if you choose to keep listening, remember, every word costs me another hour of peace I don't have to spare, because the skinwalker still wants its voice back. I'm the thief who stole its scream. They say the mountains remember every foot that presses their soil, and on the second night, the ridge traced mine like a bloodhound. I'd hold up in that roadside motel, the kind with neon buzzing like drunk cicadas and carpet that smells of mildew memories. Room 8 faced the parking lot. I parked my rust-red Ford F-150 right outside the door, tailgate aimed toward the 2-lane highway. Safe, I thought, was lines of sight and a loaded Remington pump against the headboard. I spent the day trying to act normal, drank scorched coffee in the diner next door, while the waitress called me hun and refilled my cup without asking. My phone had 0 bars happens in these valleys, so I scribbled the previous night in a composition notebook. Times, sounds, that impossible face. I kept glancing at the door, half expecting it to bulge inward with gray skin and borrowed teeth. Mid-afternoon, I drove into Preston Gap, the nearest town with cell service and a sheriff who wouldn't laugh me right out the station. But once I sat in the parking lot, cruiser lights flashing blue in the summer haze, dread drowned my courage. What if the thing wore a badge next? What if every set of human eyes might already be stitched onto its skull? My stomach curdled. Turned the truck around and headed for the library instead. The Preston Gap Public Library sits inside an old train depot, brick walls, plank floors, and that tasty smell of paper rot. I researched legends, Cherokee skinwalkers, called the Gnawed Lushi, by Navajo, but whispered of even here, stories of deer walking on hind legs, of voices imitating loved ones. The pattern always ended with missing hunters and empty clothes folded like shed husks. An hour later, the Librariana petite woman named Mrs. Hollis approached, concern wrinkling her brow. She asked if I needed help finding anything specific. I lied and said local folklore for a school project. She smiled, handed me a pamphlet on haunted trails, and told me to enjoy my spooky research. Sunset bled red across the asphalt when I pulled back into the motel. The temperature dropped fast. I locked the truck, double-checked the Remington, wedged a chair beneath the doorknob, and left the bathroom light on. Classical conditioning tells you light keeps monsters away. Appalachia breeds a darkness that chews glass in Spitz Mirror, Shards, around 10:43 p.m. Remember, because the digital clock glowed in sickly green eye, heard gravel crunch. Not a car, not boots pacing. Slow, deliberate, shadows skimmed under the door. I killed the lamp. My heartbeat thudded like a hand in a washing machine. The footfall stopped outside room 8. Something sniffed, deep and wet, as though lungs were swallowing rainwater. Then a knuckle note, a clot tapped the doorframe. 3 taps. Pause. 3 taps. I leveled the shotgun. Silence. Minutes dragged like barbed wire across my skin. Finally, a single word seeped through the cracks. Caleb. My own voice again, softer than before, as if embarrassed to disturb. I swallowed bile. The knob jiggled. The chain rattled. Metal creaked but held. Then it spoke another name. Cassie. Cassie is my sister. Lives 2 states over. Teaches 3rd grade. Pregnant with her 2nd kid. Hearing her name, my voice sang. It felt like someone carving my spine with a dull spoon. The shotgun barrel wavered. Cassie's lonely. It cooed. She wants you home. I knew what it was doing, wearing familiarity like a hunting. Blind, but emotion overrode logic. I yelled, "Leave my family out of this." The echo of my own words collided with the door. Footsteps retreated, slow and clicking. I waited 5 breaths, then 20, then slid to the floor, sweating cold. I didn't sleep. Dawn turned the curtains pale pink, and birds chirped like nothing ever stalked nightmares. I packed, paid cash at the front desk, and drove west toward my childhood home in Jackson Hollow. Not to endanger Cassie, but to warn. Mom and Dad, cell service returned enough for one shaky call. Mom answered, bless. Her hand promised to keep doors bolted. I reached the family farm by late afternoon. September wind carried drying hay and distant diesel fumes. Dad hugged me, surprised by my sudden visit. I lied against that I needed a break from construction work. Mom made sweet tea, and we sat on the porch swing as the sky ripened purple. Crickets sang. For a moment, peace lifted the weight off my chest. That night, after folks went to bed, I sat at the kitchen table, penciling new rules. Never answer your name after sunset. Never travel alone. Firearms are warnings, not weapons. The Skinwalker mimics what it learns, starve it of voices. If you hear a loved one, it's already too close. Rule 6 formed while I wrote. Trust your dog. We keep an old blue tick coonhound named Jasper. Round midnight, Jasper whined at the back door, hackles like bottle brushes. I raised my Remington, flicked the porch light, and stepped outside. Moonlight glazed the fields. Frost kissed the grass. Jasper growled, low and steady, nose aimed toward the wood line. Then the barn owl shrieked, but the note twisted, turned, liquid, and shaped my father's Sunday morning baritone. Boy, we've got coyotes in the coop. Dad was asleep upstairs. Psst, my blood stilled. From the cornrows, a figure staggered into view. Silhouette, right down to the cap heat, left on the coat rack. But the shape was taller. Dad's shoulders don't scrape rafters. Its arms dangled past the knees. Jasper bared teeth. I eased backward toward the door. Caleb, the thing crooned. Grab the .3006. We'll finish this quick. Shot the porch light. Glass exploded. Darkness swallowed the yard. In the same instant, the silhouette unfolded. 7 feet, maybe 8 spidery limbs akimbo. It hissed, no longer bothering with pretend vocals. Jasper charged. I yelled, no. But the hound barreled into the rows, barking fury. Corn leaves thrashed. Jasper yelped, one piercing, heart-splitting cry, then silence. I couldn't breathe. My legs wobbled, but I forced them off the porch into the dark sea of corn. Stalks slapped, cutting my cheeks. I whispered Jasper's name, but the field smelled only of crushed vegetation and iron blood. Moonlight found a clearing by the irrigation ditch. Jasper lay there, ribs rising, belly torn. I fell to my knees. Okay. He licked my hand, tail thumping, once, and died. My tears came silent. I wanted to stay, cradle his head, but the rustle started again behind me. Then, right, then left. The Skinwalker circled. I fled, through mud, through burrs, through the wire gate that sliced my palm. Back inside, I bolted doors, woke Dad, who grabbed his own shotgun. Mom cried, seeing the blood on my shirt. We barricaded the house, moved the oak armoire against the back door, nailed shut the cellar hatch, covered mirrors, old superstition, reflections, invite imitation. All night we listened, footsteps on gravel, scratching on the cedar siding. Sometimes it mocked Jasper's final yelp. Sometimes it rasped children's lullabies. Near dawn, it tried Mom's voice. Son, open up the storm's getting bad. But the sky outside was clear and silver dot. Sunrise finally swept the yard, revealing nothing but trampled grass and dog tracks ending where shadow begins. Dad buried Jasper beneath the oak. Mom prayed over him. I couldn't join. Shame sat heavy my. Rules had cost my best friend's life. That afternoon, I plotted next moves. It wanted my voice. It could already speak it. It wanted my face, had paraded it. What hadn't it stolen yet? My memories, Skinwalkers, were stolen lives like pelts, but they craved the beating heart of story. Why we love, why we fear. I decided to flip the hunt. There's an abandoned coal mine off Wire Ridge mile-long shaft, collapsed decades back. Locals claim dark spirits lurk, that the air turns your tongue black. Perfect, if legend says, don't go. That's where monsters wander. I packed gear, headlamp, rope, twine soaked in kerosene, 3 mason jars of pig blood bait. Dad tried to stop me. I told him I'd bring this thing down, or die trying. He gripped my shoulder the way he did when teaching me to drive on. Said, remember, courage ain't bullets. Courage is standing when legs beg to fold. I left at dusk. Cassie called while I drove, crying because she'd dreamed me dead on a riverbank. I lied again, said I'm fine, voice steady as bedrock. After we hung up, guilt hammered every mile. Wire Ridge glows rotten green where old tailings bleed metals into the soil. I parked, killed the engine, listened. Tree frogs croaked, wind rustled. Normal. I breathed deep, slung my pack, stepped beyond the rusted keep-out sign. That's when I noticed my shadow lagging a fraction of a second slower. As if light obeyed to masters. I froze. The shadow straightened, detached, and stood opposite me in perfect silhouette. My hat, my pack, my shotgun. But its jaw hung lower, and antlers branched from its temples. Caleb, murmured my voice, but stretched through centuries. The mountains already wrote your ending. Come, let me read it to you. Cold rushed my veins. I cocked the shotgun, aimed at my own outline, and pulled the trigger. The muzzle flash lit pine trunks like lightning, but the shadow cratered into mist, reforming yards away. Laughing in a rasp like 2 rocks grinding, I backed toward the mine entrance arched, timbers sagging, darkness yawning. I hadn't planned to enter until dawn, but strategy burned under terror's blowtorch. I ducked inside. Moist air kissed my cheeks. Water dripped, rails vanished into a throat of pitch. The shadow didn't follow shadow's fear, where sun never reached, but something else did. Footsteps, wet and unsteady, splashed in puddles behind. I clicked a headlamp, revealing walls pulsing with white fungus. The tunnel stretched forever. I ran deeper, hoping the maze might confuse what mimics but cannot think. Around a bend, I found an old dynamite alcove boarded with rotten planks. I slipped inside, heart-rattling ribs. The footsteps stopped at the junction, silence pregnant with choice. Then a sound I hadn't heard since childhood, a harmonica, playing Amazing Grace. Dad used to lull me with that tune before bedtime. The notes drifted soft, echoing down stone, tugging nostalgia like puppet strings. My throat tightened. Rule 7 scribbled itself. Nostalgia is venom. I stayed frozen, breathing earth rot. The harmonica faded, replaced by chewing sounds, wet tearing, confirmed by a low moan. It had found the pig blood jars I'd lined along the rails. Good. I lit a kerosene twine, tossed it. Flames whooshed, painting the passage orange. Creature. Longer shadow, but Senya flinched from the fire, eyes reflecting like coals. Flesh hung from its frame, shifting textures, fall fur on shoulders. Jasper's ear near the neck. Human lips stitched across the chest like a macabre badge. I raised the shotgun again, but before I could fire, the roof groaned. Centuries old. Timber finally surrendered. Rock cracked. Dust exploded. I dove as the ceiling crashed, separating us by a wall of debris. The creature shrieked high, displeased, not hurt. I scrambled backward, half blind, lungs searing with dust until moonlight shimmered ahead. I stumbled out, coughing blood, mud, and collapsed on slate gravel above the tree line. The moon watched, pale and distant, indifferent to man or monster. But I understood something vital in that cold light. Skinwalkers thrive in mimicry, but they hate barriers, rivers, thresholds, cave-ins. I could trap it, maybe starve it of new skins. I dragged myself to the truck, hands bleeding. Skinwalker. Howl echoing through fractured rock like a banshee caught in copper wire. Tomorrow I'd fashion a cage of salt, iron, and stories too painful to imitate. But that plan was for another day. If I survived the night rode home, as the engine turned over, I whispered a promise into the steering wheel. You stole my voice. Now you'll choke on my silence. It's a dark road, answered with the growl I felt in my molars. The hunt had only begun. Dawn crawled across Wire Ridge like a wounded thing, but I made it home alive. Dad's truck headlights washed the yard, and he charged the porch before I killed the engine. One look at my dust-gray face told him enough. The plan had cracked wide open. We dragged my gear inside, double-latched every door, and brewed. Coffee strong enough to melt copper. I sat at the kitchen table, cheeks streaked with grime, and pitched the new idea. We don't have to kill it, I said, voice hoarse. We only have to trap it, starve it of stories. Dad nodded, slow and grim. Mom crossed herself. "'Kay. Though we aren't Catholic, the recipe came from fragments. Cherokee lore that evil spirits can't cross pure salt. Old minor tales that wrought iron binds the restless dead. Mountain granny magic that says a story told backward confuses mimics. I sketched a cube in my notebook 10 feet on every side, framed with rebar, walls lined with salt blocks, floor dusted with rock salt, entrance sealed by an iron gate. Looked like a livestock pen for a demon hog. Supplies weren't hard too. Source when your family owns 60 acres and a tractor older than Disco. Dad had a rebar stacked behind the barn. Mom kept pickling salt in 50-pound sacks. I drove to Bailey's feed and farm and cleaned them out of salt licks, those big pink blocks cattle lick for minerals. The cashier raised an eyebrow. I muttered something about an experimental deer deterrent. She shrugged, rang me up, and gave me a free ball cap. Next problem, welding. Sparks carry sound, and I figured the Skinwalker tuned itself to any noise I made. So we built the cage inside the ruined chapel on Ridgeview Road, a 19th century Baptist church struck by lightning in the 40s. Only stone walls and a rotting bell tower remained, but the foundation was solid. More important, locals swore the ground still held a preacher's blessing. If holiness lingered in the limestone, all the better. Dad couldn't lift much after last year's hernia surgery, but he manned the generator and kept lookout with a deer rifle. I handled torch work, puddling weld beads thick as stalactites. Sparks hissed on damp floorboards. Each clang echoed through broken stained glass, scattering doves as hours blurred. By dusk, the cage stood skeletal but sturdy iron bones, glinting orange in lantern light. We lined interior with salt blocks, stacking like masonry. Dust stung cuts on my palms, but I welcomed the pain, reminded me I was still human. For the roof, I welded crosshatch rebar, leaving a square hole just big enough for a man to drop through. Over it, I rigged a trapdoor on counterweights. Once shut, the latch welded itself by a magnesium strip that would burn molten white when triggered. One-way ticket. Bait was trickier. It needed my scent, my voice, my memories. I recorded a cassette, old tech, harder to hijack than Bluetooth, describing the night Jasper died. Tears cracked my words. I set the tape player inside, next to my torn flannel soaked in river mud from the first encounter. I smeared pig blood across the floor-thin lines, pointing inward like arrows. The place smelled like slaughterhouse and sweat-drenched fear. Midnight loomed. Crickets hushed. Dad insisted he stay, but I refused. Skinwalker already mimicked him. If it killed the real Dad, I'd never know which face to mourn. I sent him home and locked the chapel doors from inside. Then I climbed the scaffolding just below the belfry Remington across my lap and waited. Wind slithered through cracks, carrying forest, breath moss, fungus, decay. Ghost light leaked through moon-bleached windows, silvering salt walls. My eyelids grew heavy, where a nightjar called, abrupt and lonely. Then a second nightjar answered, 2 slow syllables, spaced wrong. I jolted, awake. Footsteps circled. Outsides, soft, deliberate, as though counting stones. The tape inside cage clicked, playing my monologue. My own voice floated through the ruin, raw and trembling. When Jasper's heartbeat stopped, the night felt bigger than eternity. Sob answered. Feminine, Cassie, Caleb, please, I'm lost. I stayed silent. Another voice moms, thin with worry. Son, come out of that tower. You'll catch your death. Silence is armor, I reminded myself. Steps stopped at the chapel's west door. Hinges whined. Moonlight pooled across the nave, and the silhouette glided over shattered pews. It wore Jasper's shape, now hound body stitched upright, skull elongated, jaw lined with human teeth. The grotesque parody padded to the cage, sniffed the bloody arrows, then rose on hind legs, unfolding into my likeness halfway through the movement. Bones crackled like ice thawing. Why do you hide from yourself? It asked, twisting my vowels into something metallic. I kept breathing slow. The creature circled the cage, eyes cold red, tonight tracking the tape. It stepped inside, boots of my own design crunching salt. I yanked the pulley. Counterweight slammed. Trapdoor clanged shut. Magnesium flared, brilliant white welding. The latch. The Skinwalker whipped around, snarling, but iron grid and salt walls boxed it like a caged lightning bolt. My heart pounded thunder. For a heartbeat, the creature seemed confused, testing bars with spidery fingers. Smoke curled where its skin met salt, flesh sizzling like fat on cast iron. It recoiled, throat issuing a strangled growl. Then it calmed, lips peeling into a smile too wide. Caleb, it crooned, voice morphing now Cassie's again. You think cages hold stories? Stories live in breath, not walls. Not ascended the scaffold, boots echoing. From 5 feet away, I saw its patchwork. Hide, blistering. The smell of burning hair filled the chapel. But the creature's eyes gleamed victory, not defeat. You've pinned the river, it whispered, but water always finds a crack. I ignored the riddle and recited Psalm 23 under my breath, words rattling like loose nails. a skinwalker. Listened, head cocked, then began to mouth the verse with me perfect sync. My stomach nodded. Holy words weren't a language barrier. They were another mask. I switched tactics, reciting the alphabet backward grade school sobriety test. It mirrored flawlessly. Sweat stung my eyes. I realized the truth. It hadn't just stolen my voice. It was learning my thinking rhythm, predicting next syllables before air left my lungs. Panic clawed. I grabbed a mason jar of light blend for emergency scent, hurled it. Glass smashed. Caustic spray hissed over its chest. The creature shrieked. Genuine pain, at last. It convulsed. Limbs spasming against bars. Skin sloughing off in strips, revealing muscles that looked woven from smoke. But as it writhed, the iron frame trembled. Not from its strength, says sinew melted. Its grip weakened, but from something deeper. Sound. It was humming, a bass resonance that vibrated bolts loose. Salt blocks rattled. Dust drifted. I clapped hands over ears. The note grew, a sub-aural earthquake. Metal sang, welds glowing dull red. One joint snapped, sparks dancing. More popped like firecrackers. The cage would fail. I dashed to the generator, yanked the fuel line, doused a rag, stuffed it into the gas can spout. Improvised Molotov. I lit Dad's Zippo gift for my 21st and whispered, for Jasper. Then I hurled the blazing can into the cage. Flame whooshed, engulfing salt and flesh. Steam exploded, white and vicious, scalding my face. I stumbled back as fire roared, consuming the cage interior. The creature screamed, no mimicry now, only raw animal agony. The iron frame glowed orange, but held against collapse. Smoke choked the nave. I sprinted out the front door, lungs burning. Behind me, flames licked through busted windows, painting clouds ember red. Sirens in distance, someone must have seen the glow. I ran until gravel met pavement, collapsing by the ditch, watching the old chapel burn like a beacon to hell. When the fire trucks arrived, I let the volunteers drag hoses past me. I didn't tell them what was inside. They'd call the sheriff, and he'd find no corpse anything wearing stolen skin burns to ash. They'd blame squatters, arson, meth, anything, but ask NWALKER. As dawn paled, the chapel stood skeletonized, walls blackened. The fire chief declared it a total loss, shook his head at kids and their devil music. I forced a nod, too hollow to argue. Dad picked me up and Mom's minivan are not lost on either of us. We drove home silent. I thought it was over. The cage, the fire, the screams, they had to finish it. But that night, while bandaging burns, I heard the wind shift. Through the open window drifted a single note of amazing grace, played backward. My skin crawled. In the mirror above the sink, my reflection lagged half a heartbeat. The cage hadn't killed it. It had only peeled away another mask, and now it knew my songs. I used to think a burned monster was a dead monster. Turns out, some things only shed skin the way cicadas molt shells leaving char behind, crawling out, reborn and hungry. 2 nights after the chapel blaze, the air around our farmhouse felt bruised purple, like the moment before a thunderclap. Mom baked cornbread to settle nerves, but the oven light flickered Morse code none of us understood. Dad and I slept in. Shifts, backs against the living room wall. Remingtons resting across our knees. At 3:12 a.m., the bedroom radio clicked on by itself. Static hissed, then my own childhood laughter spilled from the speaker, bright and careless. Mom screamed, slapped the dial off, and the house plunged back into silence, so thick it rattled window panes. Somewhere beyond the fields, coyotes yipped, then cut short like someone yanked their throats away mid-howl. We couldn't stay. By dawn, we loaded essentials, rifles, bottled water, salt bags, Mom's cedar wood Bible older than her marriage. I shoved the composition notebook, now swollen, with sketches, rules, and blood-smudged page corners, to my pack. Dad started the truck while Mom locked the back door, lips moving through Psalm 91. Destination: Hawks Rest, peak highest spur of the Alleghenies in our county. Legend says the ridge is struck by lightning more than any point east of the Mississippi. Metals in the rock drawing storms like moths to porch bulbs. Lightning burns impurities, splits trees, purifies. I figured if anything could cauterize a skinwalker's tether to this world, it was a bolt from God's own taser. The road climbed switchbacks, fog curling around guardrails like ghost fingers. Halfway up, the truck sputtered. Fuel gauge still. Read half, but the engine coughed, stalled. A tad, coasted to shoulder. I popped the hood, fuel line intact, battery new, yet the smell of wet leather and spoiled meat drifted from the fan belt. I slammed the hood and scanned woods. Tree trunks leaned closer like a curious audience. Abandoned vehicle, I whispered. We hiked the final mile, Mom's breath frosting. Despite August heat, each step felt heavier, as if gravity thickened uphill. My name rolled through the pines on a wind that wasn't blowing. We reached the summit clearing by noon. A fire tower, skeleton decommissioned, 1970s speared the sky. Rusted stairs spiraled 60 feet to a rotting cab. Lightning-shattered pines ringed the clearing, bark seared into charcoal hieroglyphs. I unpacked rock salt, poured a circle 20 yards in diameter, then another inside, forming a double ring. Mom placed the Bible at center. Dad hammered grounding rods, salvaged iron fence posts at compass points. Finally, I scattered shards of unburned salt block from the chapel, part charred, part crystalline, closing a loop, I hoped, between the monster's last shed skin and its next. We waited. Clouds piled dark as gun barrels, thunder murmuring in distant valleys. The static in the air prickled my singed cheeks. I tuned my portable cassette again. Hit play, Akana. My recorded voice echoed across rocks. An apology to Jasper, a promise to guard Cassie's unborn child, a confession of terror. Every word was Batra, and UNSWEETENED. Became ours. Afternoon slid toward dusk, and thunderheads towered black. Then Mom's eyes widened. She pointed at the tree line. It approached on all fours, my hound again. Hide, melted bones, bare. Halfway across the clearing it rose, unfurling into my burnt doppelganger, skin dripping pitch. I raised the shotgun and shouted, inside the circle, or burn. It paused at the salt boundary, nostrils flaring. Smoke leaked where feet touched residue, smiled charcoal teeth, then spoke Dad's voice, smooth as bourbon. Sun, storms, break circles. Sure you want the sky to choose which Caleb survives? I chambered around. The creature stepped back, eyes gleaming like hot nails. Then it did something worse than advance. It began to sing Amazing Grace in perfect three-part harmony, layering Mom's soprano, Dad's baritone, and my tenor all at once. Chords vibrating the clouds themselves. Lightning forked overhead, dazzling white, thunder cracked, shaking marrow. The salt ring blew open at the east post iron rod, glowing red, then bursting like a grenade. Dirt sprayed. The creature slipped through the breach, inside the outer circle, but halted by the inner line of shards. Rain erupted sheets of ice water. Salt dissolved into slurry. I yelled for Mom and Dad to back away to the tower base. They retreated, clutching one another. The cassette sputtered, drowned. The monster tilted its head, letting rain hiss against sizzling flesh. Wear your grief now, it said softly, voice layered with 3 generations of my bloodline. Give me your hope next. I slung the shotgun, grabbed the steel climb cable I'd anchored to the tower earlier, and bolted up the staircase. Wind clawed, steps groaned, flakes of rust drifting like dead wasps. Halfway up, I looked down. The creature paced the inner circle, gaze following. Yet it couldn't decipher the stairs of human concept of upward dot. At the top cab, I lashed the cable to a girder. Fishing line tied to steel hooks I had seated in my jacket. Homemade lightning rod. The sky throbbed electric blue. I screamed, "Come take my hope, freak." Below, it shrieked, skin blistering, but began to climb hands and feet, finding step edges, despite confusion. Each metal plate it touched, smoked, rain hissing. I pulled bolt cutters from my pack, severed 2 lower steps, leaving a gap. The creature lunged, missed, dangles. One arm stretched impossibly, shoulder cracking as bone elongated, grabbing next rung. Up it came. I prayed, reckless. Lord, if your wrath ever needed aim it now. Then I clipped the cable hook to my belt, opened my arms to the storm, and roared my full name first, middle, last, like signing away ownership. The creature burst onto the platform, black eyes sparking lightning reflection. It lunged. I sidestepped, planting a boot into its chest. It staggered against the far rail. Wind screamed through ruptured boards. Thunder boomed. Light shattered the world. A bolt struck the tower mast, current racing down the cable into my body, then out my boots, arcing across the gap to the monster. Pain seared every nerve. Vision went white. The creature lit up incandescent, veins glowing neon, flesh peeling like film. Its scream overrode thunder, a frequency that cracked the tower glass. I smelled ozone and burning hair, maybe my own. Muscles convulsed, but the grounding plate in my boot soles held just long enough Dad's idea, old lineman tricks. The energy shot through me into the beast, and under its feet the salt shards flared, a ring of miniature suns. Another bolt hammered, timed direct into the monster's skull, splitting it like a flaming log. Blue-white fire engulfed the platform. Felt myself lifted, weightless. Then darkness swallowed consciousness. When my eyes fluttered open, rain had stopped. Clouds parted to reveal stars, raw and clean. I lay in ash on the platform. Cables snapped. Wooden rails charred. Across from me, nothing remained but a pile of soot-blackened teeth fused into a single lump, still warm. I staggered down burnt steps. Mom and Dad ran to meet me, tears mixing with rainwater. We hugged until ribs protested. Dawn tinted the East Ridge orange dot, in the mud where the inner circle once lay. Salt had crystallized into quartz bright spirals like glass flowers. At center, Mom's Bible remained untouched, steam rising gently off leather. We buried the fused teeth under those salt glass blossoms, marking the grave with a lightning-scarred pine cross. No words, just silence and birdsong. Driving home, exhaustion draped shoulders heavier than iron. I kept glancing inside mirror for lagging reflections. But every face matched motion perfectly. Yet something felt off. My voice sounded hollow, inside skull, as if echoes still lived there. That night, alone in my old bedroom, I dreamed of the Skinwalker kneeling in a field of glass, holding broken antlers to the sky, singing a song that split clouds. When I woke, I could still taste burnt salt on my tongue. I wish this ending felt like victory, but survival often tastes like smoke and unanswered questions. Did I destroy it, or merely teach it how lightning sings? I don't know. Good. All I know is dawn keeps arriving, and each sunrise I test my reflection for lag. If you're hearing this testimony, remember, names are doors, songs are keys, and some mountains echo back more than sound. Should the wind ever return your voice late at night, do not answer. Keep silent. Let the skies speak for you, and pray the storm answers kindly. Because if it doesn't, you'll learn, like me, that skinwalkers never truly die. They just wait for the next story to wear. Morning sunlight looks innocent. Until you realize monsters can wear it like Sunday clothes. 3 days after Hawk's Rest, our farmhouse buzzed with a silence so thick it felt electric. Mom's cornbread spoiled overnight mold spreading in spiderweb fractals, even though the kitchen was cool. Dad's tomatoes blackened on the vine, skins wrinkling inward like sucked out eyeballs. The mountain didn't just breathe, cewed. It exhaled rot. But the strangest decay leached from inside me. Words tasted metallic, like I'd bitten my tongue though. No blood flowed. When I spoke, Mom tilted her head, said my voice sounded 2 notes deeper. Dad chalked it up to fatigue. But I knew better. Something hitchhiked in that lightning-striking ember of Skinwalker fire lodging in my throat. Rule. It scribbled itself across my notebook margin. When you fight a mimic, pieces trade places. I decided Cassie had to know. If the thing learned her lullabies through me, it could cradle her unborn child in nightmares. So we packed the minivan again. Mom refused to let me go alone and drove east toward Knoxville. 180 miles of switchbacks and roadside crosses. The first omen hit at a rest stop near Pine Gap. I stepped into a stall, locked the door. As soon as silence settled, my phone vibrated. Unknown number, voicemail notification. No Bars Mountain shadow yet, a message downloaded. I pressed play, static fizzed, then my own voice murmured. Still here, Caleb. Open wide. I slammed the phone, threw a black bile into the toilet. When I looked up, the graffiti on the stall read listen letters, greasy fresh. But no one else had entered. Back in the car, I told Mom, nothing her eyes already ringed with grief halos. We arrived at Cassie's cul-de-sac by dusk, cicadas, rasping like defective vinyl. Porch lights glowed calm. Cassie wobbled outside, belly round under floral dress. She hugged me, then recoiled, sniffed the air. Caleb, you smell like singed wires. Inside, the cozy ranch house felt alien-framed ultrasound on the mantle, cartoon magnets on fridge spelling baby. Cassie's husband, Mark, shook my hand, eyes scanning bruises on my wrists. We sat around the breakfast nook, I poured salt in, a circle under the tablecloth. Hoping superstition still worked indoors. I told them everything, the river, Jasper, the chapel, lightning. Words spilled like gravel, rasping throat raw. Mark listened, pale-faced, but Cassie gripped her mug, knuckles bleach white. When I finished, she whispered, I dreamed a black-eyed man humming Amazing Grace outside the nursery window. I thought it was nerves. At that moment, the baby monitor upstairs crackled. A lullaby chimed the built-in music Cassie used for practice. Then came a too familiar melody, reversed and slowed, like molasses over broken glass. Dad sprinted up the stairs, shotgun ready. Mom followed, clutching a wooden cross. Hustled behind, salt shaker in pocket. The nursery glowed, soft blue from a nightlight shaped like a moon. Crib, empty for now. Plush toys, neatly arranged. The monitor, speaker hissed, voice whispering, Cassie, hope. The last word gulped like watered down wrong pipe. The curtains billowed, although window latched. I poured salt across the sill, chanting random Bible verses until the voice receded. Okay. Then Mark's phone rang downstairs, Cassie's ringtone, though her cell was on the table. He answered. A baby cried. Then my voice croaked, come, see the stars split. Mark through the phone. Screen spiderwebbing. Technology had become its new skin. The chapel fire taught it fear of iron and salt. Lightning taught it electricity. Out road, radio waves, cell towers, Bluetooth, maybe even nerves, bioelectric. Whispers. Rule 9. Walls stop ODs, not signals. We unplugged every smart device, router, Alexa, speaker, baby monitors, powered down phones, pulled SIMs, yanked fuse box main switch. House plunged into candlelight hush. But electrical silence doesn't erase what's already inside flesh. That night, I slept on the couch, shotgun across lap. Dreams blistered high. Walked a hallway of mirrors, each reflection blinking half-second late. One mirror showed Cassie, cradling a soot-black infant, humming reversed hymns. Another showed me antlers sprouting from a burnt scalp, its mouth opening wider than jaw allowed. I woke before dawn to a smell-o-zone in penny copper. The TV, unplugged, flickered, static. In the fuzz, a shape resolved, my outline wearing Dad's hat, but instead of eyes, twin sockets of crawling Kodo south and one south blinking like fireflies. The voice issued from speakers with no power. You caged my skin, but now I wear wires. I raised the shotgun and fired. Glass burst, screen died. The concussion woke the household. Screams and footsteps reigned. Mark demanded what happened. I pointed at shards. They showed only my own fractured face, eyes wild time to seek older medicines. I thought Dad knew a man, Ed Greyhawk, Cherokee elder, Vietnam vet turned folk healer, lives in a trailer above Red Knife Creek, miles off paved road. Dead, once guided. Rescue teams searching for a boy lost 3 days. When they found the child, he claimed voices of the stone led him. People call that superstition. I call it a lead. By noon, we convoyed Mark driving Cassie's SUV, Mom and Dad behind me, riding tail-encased tires shredded from hex. Mountain roads rose like coiled serpents. K radio off, windows cracked, the only sound our tires crunching gravel. Ed's trailer squatted among rhododendrons, smoke curling from stovepipe. He greeted us, bare-chested, braids streaked silver, eyes sharp as flint. After introductions, he studied me, then spat tobacco juice onto moss. Your shadow hums wrong, he said, half in, half out. He tapped my sternum. You carry its egg. Cassie gasped. I felt heat pulse behind ribs, like a second heart. Ed led us to a circle of river stones behind the trailer. He mixed ash, bear grease, and red clay into paste, smearing symbols on my forehead spiral. Arrow, broken mouth. Then he built a small fire, sprinkling cedar and sage. Story eaters feed on telling. He told us, shut the tail inside, starve it. He handed me a deer-hide drum. Beat steady, but no word, escape, mouth or mind. I sat cross-legged in smoke, drum between knees, pounding slow heartbeat. Ed chanted in Cherokee, words rolling like river over rocks. Mom and Cassie prayed Psalm 23 softly. Dad watched perimeter, rifle ready, minutes stretched, elastic, heat, built under skin, scalp prickled. I clenched jaw, refusing to think of Skinwalker. But images erupted, lightning tower, ash teeth, Jasper's dying yelp. Drum faltered. Ed slapped my shoulder, barked hold. I resumed rhythm. The heat turned to stabbing cold. Breath fogged, though afternoon sweltered. A voice hissed behind. Teeth, let me speak, or she dies. Visions of Cassie's child, stillborn, flashed. I almost answered, but Ed threw a handful of salt onto the fire. Blue flame roared, smoke wreathing me. The entity screamed through my vocal cords, splitting feedback, shriek dud. Blood trickled from nostrils. Mark held Cassie, sobbing. Dad aimed a rifle at nothing and everything. Then, the world pivoted. One moment, I sat by fire. Next, I stood in a black void, drum gone. Across from me loomed the Skinwalker, but half its body flickered static, circuits weaving with sinew. It wore my lightning-scarred jacket, but the eyes were modem lights blinking green and red. You can't mute progress, Kate said, voice multitonal, like overlapping phone calls. Folk magic fights bone. I am waveform. I realized this was inner battle mindscape where it rooted. I had no salt here, no iron, but I had silence. A clamped thought visualized a void of blank paper. The creature snarled, images sputtering. It reached out. My chest burned as if claws raked inside lungs. I remembered Rule 4, starve it of voices. I pictured Jasper, loyal even in death, standing between us, tail wagging. Skinwalker hesitated, unable to mimic unconditional love. I expanded the scene. Mom humming, Cassie teaching fractions, Dad gut laughing at corny jokes. Pure memories, no fear. The creature shrank, static, fizzing. It tried to steal a memory. Jasper's bark warped into dial-up screech, but I replaced it with silence, white as snowfall. Finally, the figure cracked like glass under hammer, shards of code and skin scattering into darkness. I gasped, awake by the fire, collapsing forward. Ed caught me. Smoke cleared. Air smelled of fresh rain. The paste symbols on my face had burned into dry flakes. Cassie touched my cheek, eyes wide. "Your voice," she whispered. I spoke 2 words, "I'm here," and heard my natural pitch again. Ed nodded, satisfied. Egg broken, but shell fragments linger. Huh. He handed me a leather pouch of cedar, dust and turquoise chips. "Keep this near throat, and end your story soon before new echoes hatch." That night, we stayed in Ed's trailer, fetid with incense, but safe. I dreamed of quiet woods, no whispers. Dawn came golden. Cassie hugged me goodbye, hope lighting her face for the first time since we arrived. Mom pressed Bible into my hands cover, warm despite morning chill. Yet, as we drove away, my phone vibrated a new voicemail icon, though SIM removed. Fear coiled, but I forced calm, played it on speaker. Only wind rustled. Then a child's giggling, familiar, bubbled through static. A lullaby tinkled, reversed, fragmentary. Finally, a distant voice, not mine, not anyone I knew, murmured 2 syllables. "Hawks, rest." The mountain was calling us back. Story wasn't over, merely changed chapters. Rule 10 inked itself at bottom of page. Endings kill stories, so monsters kill endings. I looked at Dad in the driver's seat. "We're going home," I said. "It's time to finish writing." He nodded, jaw set like Appalachian granite. Somewhere beyond the ridges, the Skinwalker wore whatever new shape it wore waited amid burned pines and salt glass blossoms, thirsty for the final verse. Pada. But I carried silence in a pouch of cedar and turquoise, and sometimes silence is the loudest weapon. We turned west, climbing into cloud-shadowed switchbacks, drums of memory beating steady in our chests. And as the road wound higher, I tasted hope again, not sweet, but sharp, like sucking on a cedar splinter. Hope that this tale would soon find the period that monsters fear most, the last breath of a storyteller who refuses to be echoed. Hawks rest burned into the rear-view mirrors like a fever dream we couldn't outrun. Yet the voicemails, 2 ghost syllables, "Hawks rest," dragged us back along the same switchbacks, moonlit asphalt gleaming like exposed bone. It's time, though. We came prepared for a war of silence. Dad welded metal mesh cages around every phone, radio, and GPS unit, turning the minivan into a rolling Faraday coffin. Mom lined dashboard and door seams with cedar branches. I wore Ed Greyhawk's pouch at my throat, turquoise chips rattling like distant rain. Cassie and Mark stayed behind in Knoxville, house salted to the rafters, landline ripped out, safe. We hoped. The closer we crept to the ridge, the worse technology behaved. Dashboard lights dimmed, then flashed more spurts of garbled hymns. The engine's idle became a low growl that occasionally whispered my name through the exhaust. But the cages held. The sounds stayed trapped inside their metal coffins, impotent echoes. We parked near the burned-out tower skeleton just after dusk. Clouds crawled fast, purple bellies pregnant with storm. The salt glass blossoms Dad and I had planted around. The fused tooth grave now glowed faintly, each petal humming like a tuning fork. I touched one. Vibrations thrummed up my arm, translating as a single word. Listen. But listening fed it language. I stuffed wax earplugs, suggestion to both ears. World muffled, my own heartbeat thundered loud as drums. Dad did the same. Mom refused, wanted to hear danger coming. She pressed a palm to my cheek, whispered, "Love is louder," and followed us into the char circle. We'd come with a plan. The old Civilian Conservation Corps bunkers from the 1930s honeycombed the ridge. Underfoot storage for dynamite when men still scarred mountains for fire breaks. Shored with iron rails, now crumble in darkness. Caned, I'm born. Of toil remembers honest sweat and repels trickster spirits. If we could herd the Skinwalker into that warren and collapse the entrance, maybe it would starve on echoes trapped in stone. Thunder muttered overhead. Rain began the needles at first, then sheets. Wet cedar smell mixed with ozone and char. We advanced single file toward the bunker hatch behind the tower, Dad's lantern wrapped in red cloth to hide our light. Every footfall squelched mud. Halfway there, Mom halted, head cocked. Even through wax, I sensed its vibration in soil, like distant bass. She mouthed, "Radio." The ridge's defunct emergency broadcast, so run a rusted horn atop a county shed, crackled to life. Pathetic, erupted. Then my voice poured out, amplified across valleys. Caleb Jackson, age 7, missing. Caleb Jackson, age 8, missing. Caleb Jackson, age 9. Ledger me erased year by year. Mom's knuckles whitened on the Bible. Dad motioned forward. We hurried, ignoring the siren's tally of my vanishing lives. When we reached the bunker door, an iron slab, half concealed by moss, stood open. Inside, darkness pooled thick as oil. I clicked my headlamp, shielded inside mesh, and entered first. To null air tasted like penny water. Rails glinted beneath decades of rust. I sprinkled rock salt in a breadcrumb trail and arrow, pointing inward. For our hunter, 50 yards in, we found the main chamber, a domed vault where miners once stored TNT crates. The ceiling dripped calcite. Walls sparkled with pyrite flecks, like trapped stars. Dad and I had pre-staged supplies a week prior. 5 burlap sacks of fertilizer soaked in diesel. Wired 2 blasting caps salvaged from his old quarry job. Enough. Boom. 2 fold the hill. We stacked the sacks at a choke point, ran dead cord to a manual plunger near the exit. The scheme: lower it past the bombs, sprint out, cave the tunnel. No electricity for it to ride, just old school chemistry. Mom stood guard as we worked, whispering prayers. Wax dulled her voice into soothing vibrations. I finished splicing wires, gave thumbs up. Time to bait the trap. I removed earplugs long enough to record a fresh cassette, me admitting every fear I'd swallowed of failing Jasper, of letting Cassie's baby be born into nightmare of watching my parents age under burden. Raw, unsugared truth. Then I clipped the recorder's play button, volume max, set it atop a salt mound inside the chamber. We retreated to the outer tunnel. Rainwater trickled down shaft, plinking iron like a clock countdown. And that's when the pines outside began to sing. No human chorus. This was a forest of transistor radios tuned to every frequency, glaring overlapping hymns, school announcements, emergency alerts. Among them, my name thrummed, stretched, shredded, reassembled. The sound vibrated stone, sneaking through wax into marrow. Mom gripped my sleeve, eyes wide. She could hear it without wax. Dad mouthed, "Hold." Footsteps slurry splashed down the entrance slope. Silhouette glided into view. Tall antlers branching with copper wires. Torso flickering static. Its eyes were broken radio dials spinning through channels. It's a salt line, steamed wherever drops hit, but it stepped over with ease learned immunity. It followed the breadcrumb trail, lured by my confessions, echoing deeper. As it passed us, we pressed flat against a wall, breaths shallow. The creature's form warped, now, half silhouette, half note of lightning, legs pixelating, then reforming. It didn't see us. Our silence starved it. Once it vanished into the chamber. Dad squeezed the plunger handle arms, straining. Click. Nothing. Moisture must have shorted the blasting cap wire. He cursed, silent. I yanked the backup flare from my belt phosphorus. Fuse. Plan B. Manual detonation. We crept forward. Aside the chamber, the Skinwalker hunched over the tape deck, absorbing every ounce of my shame, feeding. Its spine arced, static crackled down limbs. The flicker of its form grew more solid. Q, wearing my skin again, but glitch, stuttering like bad video. Dad, armed a flare, whispered, count, though I heard nothing with wax. 3, 2, he struck igniter. White flame roared. K, he hurled flare onto fertilizer sacks. Diesel-soaked burlap ignited, flames rolling across sacks in seconds. But fertilizer isn't TNT. It needs pressure to detonate. We needed to leave now and hope heat built in time. We ran. Behind us, a roar of inhuman rage bounced tunnel's creature, sensing trap. Footfalls sprinted metal claws, scraping rail. I threw a glass jar of salt back over shoulder, hissed on impact but barely slowed it. Light ahead, bunker mouth, burst. Into rain first, then Dad, then me. We sprinted up slope, mud sliding under boots. Halfway up, K, white flash blew behind, concussion lifting us, flinging downhill. Ears rang wax, no match for shockwave. A plume of rock dust geysered, pines shuddered, silence followed. K salute. Then, from crater mouth, a single arm crawled out charred, jointless, made of static filaments, knitting bone. It gripped earth, pulling torso that glitched between my burned doppelganger and a silhouette of jagged code. Dad groaned, staggered. He raised rifle, fired. Shot tore through glitch flesh pixels, exploding into blue sparks but arm, reformed. The creature dragged its wrecked legs. K, now twin satellite dishes, cycling static snow. It spoke without sound words printed across our minds. Stories always reboot. Mom screamed scripture. Words shredded mid-air into syllables of white noise. My throat burned bimbreo of echo trying to hatch again. I clutched the cedar pouch. Turquoise grew hot. Remember silence. I grabbed mud, smeared it over mouth primitive, gag into pressed, mud into Mom's lips, then Dad's. No words, it's only action. Lightning cracked over headstorm, finally breaking. A bolt speared a pine, bark exploding. The thunderclap rolled across clearing. The creature recoiled, static spasm. It still feared raw power. I locked gaze with Dad. Plan C formed unspoken. Lead it beneath the tower's skeleton, the tallest conductor still standing. We dashed sideways toward the charred metal frame, creature limping after, cleaching sparks, fizzing footprints. Rain poured, turning earth slick. We reached the tower's base. I climbed first, remembering missing steps. Dad followed. Mom last, despite age. Grip iron. Midway up, lightning web sky. The creature reached base, arms elongating, gripping beams. Metal groaned. It began to climb. Static, melting rust, thunder boomed, so close it shook fillings. I unclipped remaining cable, new, insulated from belt, wrapped it to tower mast stub. Tossed end to Dad, who lashed around beam near us. We became part of circuit again, but this time without grounding souls. Live wire finale. The creature closed gap. Eyes now strobes. It lifted claws to grab our rung. I peeled mud from mouth, shouted single word, a gift of last language. Now, my voice shattered silence like clay pot, but it was worth the spark. Lightning answered. White knife, split cloud, stabbed mast. Current ripped through us, through cable, through tower, into creature. World turned ghost bright, muscles locked, pain, a perfect blooming flower. But I felt cedar pouch flare cold, absorbing shock. The creature shrieked, ultrasonic, body throbbing, rainbow static. Then burst pixels scattering into rain like shattered LCD blackout. When senses crawled back, we lay tangled on wet gravel. Tower mast smoked. Thunder retreated east. Rain eased too. Drizzle. In my hand, cedar pouch cracked but intact. No sign of creature, only puddle of blackened crystals, each one tiny and square, like foxel ashes. Dad stirred, helping Mom sit. We hugged, sobbing, silent. I didn't trust victory. I scooped crystals into thermos, sealed tight. We limped to van, started engine miraculously, working end, began descent, halfway down the ridge. Radio still, caged buzzed once, then died. I exhaled, but as we joined the state road, a highway bulletin board flickered overhead. Letters, forming bright amber against night. CAL 3BJ4 CKSONROUTE 65 Saint ORY CONT 1NU ESD NT punched gas. Eyes fixed ahead. I swallowed dread. The monster had no body, but its code still leaked into the grid. Rule 11 etched itself sharper than lightning. When you kill the hardware, backup deletes last. The final fight would not be with salt or iron or even silence. It would be with every circuit humming in Appalachia's veins. And dawn was only 7 hours away. We barreled west on Route 65 with the dawn still locked behind mountains. The van's headlights tunneling through Appalachian dark like a needle, through black cloth. Dad white-knuckled the wheel. Mom prayed without sound. And I sat in the back seat, cradling the thermos that rattled with pixel ash. Physical remnants of a monster that now lived as code. Every milepost ticked like a metronome, counting down the last 7 hours of night. Rule 12 formed in my head like frost on glass. When a story escapes its body, it seeks a bigger stage. If the Skinwalker wanted circuits, we'd give it the biggest grid in 3 counties. The Langston Peak relaying abandoned microwave tower complex built during the Cold War. Once part of the AT&T long line's backbone. Locals called it the Thousand Mouths because rusted parabolic dishes cling to the ridgeline like open jaws. Though decommissioned, it still ties into regional fiber via dormant conduits. Stories say teen hackers powered it back up last year, just long enough to pirate stream horror movies onto interstate billboards. They could wake the beast, so could the monster. We crested a hill and the silhouettes appeared. Skeletal towers, dishes yawning toward the horizon, cables drooping like veins. Lightning flickered deep in western clouds, illuminating the metal teeth. My pulse synced with storm cadence. Dad killed headlights and coasted into a maintenance pool off-choked by kudzu. The air hummed, faintly, maybe transformer ghosts, maybe the Skinwalker stretching its new wings. We suited up, rubber-soled boots, mesh-lined hoods, cedar sachets, pinned at the throat. Mom carried the Bible and a mason jar of holy water, blessed by 3 denominations to cover all bets. I carried the thermos ashes the monster might still need. First, objective, cut the dormant fiber conduit, feeding the array to isolate it from internet backbounds. Second, reach the central switch room and place the thermos inside a Faraday cage of our own design for steel ammo boxes welded into a coffin lined with salt and turquoise powder. Third, blow the backup diesel generators, starve the place of power. Our last stand would be analog. We hiked a gravel road, slick with rain and pine needles. Tower stalks loomed, wind moaning through lattice. My headlamp lens flashed air battery. full, but the LED pulsed Morse code. Kill them all. I ripped it off, stomped it. The code had found another speaker. We reached the fiber junction box. Padlock rusted. Dad's bolt cutters squealed, snapping metal. I pulled the hinge door. Inside, bundles of optic cable gleamed under calcium deposits. I lifted garden shears, wrapped in rubber, poised dead. Then the forest burst with voices every dish on every tower. Blared life simultaneously. 100 throatless speakers vomited overlapping snatches of radio drama. Police dispatch, my childhood birthdays. Mom reading Goodnight Moon, Dad cursing a deer that ate tomatoes. The sound ricocheted off valley walls, building into a tide that pressed lungs from within. Mom clapped hands over ears. Dad grimaced, mouthing, "Cut it." I sliced. Fiber snapped like angel hair, ends sparking faint green. The noise faltered, dishes hissed static, then died. Wind reclaimed air. I exhaled, shoulders dropping, but the ground underfoot thrummed, low and insistent, a dial tone from hell. The monster didn't need the internet. The tower structures themselves conducted resonance. It had evolved, yet again. We hustled uphill to the main building cinder block windows, busted, graffiti spelling "Listen" in neon paint. Door hung open, hinges screeching. Inside, racks of decapitated servers lined halls. Generator fumes lingered from last year's teenage stunt. Red diesel cans still stacked in corner. We navigated to switch room center of spiderweb, its floor littered with coax coils and mouse nests. Dad and I positioned the ammo box coffin in metal lid jar. I unscrewed thermos, poured crystal ash into felt pouch lined with copper mesh, dropped it inside. We closed lid, dog-eared latches. Then salt ring, then cedar shavings. Mom recited Psalm 29 aloud voice, steady. "Okay." This time, her words didn't warp. The cage stifled echo hunger. Objective to done. On to power. The generators squatted in a back NX for Cummins, diesels caked in dust. Fuel lines dry, but batteries still present. We smashed ignition panels, cut cables, and soaked circuitry with holy water. Dad rigged a small charge of thermite on each. Engine block his quarry skills at Gandon set cheap kitchen timers for 20 minutes as we worked. The lights flickered on fluorescent tubes that shouldn't glow without power near ultraviolet, hum-drenched corridor. The air tasted like copper wire. Mom pointed. The cage coffin vibrated, lid jumping. Something inside trying to rewrite matter. Suddenly, every busted CRT monitor in the hallway blinked to life. Screens, swirling snow. Messages scrolled. CAL3BBECOMENOISE. Then a video feed popped grainy black and white of Jasper trotting through field, alive. My heart clenched. The Skinwalker weaponized nostalgia again. I bit tongue until iron-filled mouth. The screens multiplied images of Mom, Dad, Cassie holding newborn son I'd never met. Each smiled, but eyes pixelated, a synthetic lullaby reverse. Amazing Grace piped from ceiling speakers, slowed to funeral dirge. My throat burned, the creature pushing embryo echo into vocal cords. I gagged, feeling static crawled up esophagus. Mom splashed holy water on my lips. Sizzled like acid, but pain cleared head. Dad shouted, "Timers, 5 minutes left." We had to escape before. Thermite cooked building, but the coffin still rattled. The ashes wanted out. Could the monster already be free of them? If so, destroying coffins meaningless. But Ed said fragments linger. Maybe ashes still anchor part of its code. We stick to plan. We turned for exit quarter, now clogged with wires slithering like snakes, conduit bursting as coax unfurled to snag ankles. Mom swung Bible batting cables aside. I hacked with machete. Cod fired shotgun at a mass of wires. Forming humanoid outline, they recoiled, shredded plastic sparking, by the doorway. Tower interior vibrated, subsonic metal roof plates flexing. Discs outside swiveled, focusing on building like sunflowers to dawn. They began to resonate, windows trembling. A harmonic crescendo built felt more than heard, threatening to liquefy bone. Rule 13 ghost rode across mind. When sound breaks stone, silence must move. I ripped Ed's cedar pouch from neck, tore it open. Turquoise chips spilled into palm, still cool. I hurled them into corridor while whispering, nothing mouth moving, but breath held. Turquoise shattered on the floor, each shard blossoming blue shockwave of dead silence, soaking up resonance like sponge. The building's vibration faltered, just enough. We burst outside into rain. Timers ticked last 30 seconds. We sprinted downslope toward Kudzu pull off. Lightning spidered sky. Thunder rolled like boulders. At 20 seconds, dishes above pivoted in unison, focusing unseen energy on a Sarah shimmering. The frog. Chorus ceased. World held breath. 10 seconds. Mom tripped, ankle twisting. Dad and I hauled her under arms, muscles burning. 5 seconds, the lullaby roared overhead, pitched so high, glass shards lifted off ground like dust. High eardrums threatened to pop, though wax steel present 0. A muted, flashlit hillside. The annex roof bulged, then collapsed inward as thermite cascaded molten iron through generators. A second pulse followed, deeper fuel tanks igniting. Fireball punched clouds, shockwave knocking us face first into mud. When we rose, towers glowed orange from reflected fire. Dishes sagged, frames twisting in heat. The hum stopped. Rain hissed on slag. Silence. Then faint tapping on pocket. My dead phone, still caged, vibrated. Screen flashed. R35T1N N01S3, then black. Dad exhaled long, exhaustion mixing with relief. We dragged Mom to van, splinted ankle with cedar branch. Dawn broke at last, washing char gray clouds with peach light. Birds resumed tentative song. Driving down Langston Peak felt like leaving a war zone. Towers shrinking in mirror looked less like jaws now, more like blackened trees. My shoulders loosened. Mom dozed, Bible clutched. Dad smiled thin. Hope, till we reached the valley where cell service returned. Every phone and glove box, even those without batteries, lit simultaneously, screens white. Text appeared across them all. CFG Colonel, rebuild 9 o'clock a.m. The monsters speaking in system logs, time 2 hours away. Rule 14 etched. When software resurrects, you must pull the plug on the world. But how do you kill electricity across Appalachia without frying hospitals? Life support, Cassie's baby monitor. My gut clenched. Dad parked at Overlook. Fog wreathed hollows below, power lines stretching like veins. He turned to me. Son, it's learning faster than we can burn it. I nodded, thinking of Ed's words. End your story soon before new echoes hatch. We hadn't ended. We'd just escalated. A flicker outside, along the valley. Streetlights flashed daylight white, even though sun-up synchronized pulse. Grid test. No, the Skinwalker warming circuits for kernel rebuild at 9. It aimed to boot itself into every connected device, phones, smart fridges, pacemakers. Mom whispered, if it wants everything, maybe we starve it by giving it nothing. She gestured to Valley Substation, a steel maze humming on far hillside. Pool, the master breaker, but that's tens of thousands of volts. Manual shutoff requires keys, codes. The sabotage would plunge towns into blackout nursing homes, water pumps. Its consequences deep. Yet monsters thrive in consequences. If we hesitate, it inherits the world. I opened glove box, pulled county map. The Appalachian Power clifftop, switching yard routes, bulk energy to 5 counties. It's staffed, but skeleton crew on Sunday mornings. Today, is Sunday. Plan formed. Breachyard. Trigger emergency load loss that isolates region but reroutes. Power via interstate gritter brownout. Not fatal. Use copper thermite charges on bus bars so outage lasts until crews rebuild days. Maybe weeks enough to starve digital demon. Risk. Arc flash could kill us instantly. But surviving means no story left to haunt. Dad, not a decision made. Mom brushed tears, kissed our foreheads, and insisted she'd drive the van to Cassie if we failed. We split gear, salt, thermite, cedar, final shotgun shells. I pocketed a single turquoise chip as we stepped out. My phone still cage wrapped pinged once more. Voice memo, autoplay. Cassie singing gentle lullaby to unborn child, clear and lovely. No static. Real recording from last Christmas. The monster taunting or memory random. Doesn't matter. Shut it off, but kept a file reminder what we fight for. We headed toward Clifftop Yard. Sun climbing to steaming off ferns. Dishes on Langston Peak, silent behind us. But power lines hummed with stories eager for revival. And I knew the final rule, though I hadn't written it yet. Sometimes, to save a voice, you must silence the choir. We marched on gravel, boots crunching, ready to pull the plug on Appalachia and pray the mountains forgive us. The clifftop switching yard sprawled across the ridge like a nest of steel cobras, each bus bar pulsing with the lifeblood of 5 Appalachian counties. Sunrise set the ceramic insulators glowing peach, but the humming in the wires felt wrong, like 1,000 tiny mouths reciting code just beyond human hearing. Somewhere inside that lattice, the Skinwalker's kernel rebuild countdown ticked toward 9 a.m., and we had 56 minutes left. Dad parked the van behind a line of service trucks. Sunday skeleton crew meant 3 linemen tops. In their pickups sat empty coffee, thermoses on dashboards, radios squawking weather updates. The facility's chain-link gate yawned open, a bad sign. Either security slept in, or the monster had already shown its badge. Mom stayed with the van, ankle-splinted pistol on lap. If things went sideways, she'd floor it to Knoxville with a promise to warn Cassie. Dad and I slipped through the gate, cedar sachets at our throats, packs rattling with salt, copper thermite charges, and one battered turquoise chip, the last sliver of coated silence. We skulked along concrete cable trenches toward the control. Mezzanine, a windowed box that overlooked the yard like a watchful hawk. The hum deepened as we approached, resonating viscera. I flashed on Ed Greyhawk's warning, starve the tail or become its speaker. I swallowed bile. Inside the mezzanine, fluorescent tubes buzzed, but no crew in sight. Banks of SCADA terminals glowed amber. Screens rolled bug logs, too fast to read. As we crossed the threshold, motion sensor dinged, cheerful chime. Speakers crackled, then Cassie's voice clear, pleading, "Caleb, please don't." Static ignored her vowels. Rule 15. Every plea after dawn is just another mask. I ignored it, scanning panel labels until I found the manual load shedding. Controls 5 rotary breakers as tall as tombstones, each keyed. Keys absent. Dad cursed silently. But there was another option. The high voltage bus bars outside. Blow those and current trips upstream automatically, isolating yard. Key. Thermite on copper would melt conductors like butter. Key, but to place charges, we'd need to climb the open air gantry with 230 kilovolts lines inches overhead. One arc flash and we'd be charcoal silhouettes. Footsteps echoed down metal stairs. We ducked behind rack. A figure entered mezzanine alignment in orange coveralls, work boots, tracking mud. He walked stiff, as if strings pulled him. When he turned, we saw eyes, pupils white, irises crawling, static. Lips moved, voice modulated digital monotone. Kernel rebuild at 42 minutes. Evacuate flesh for patch deployment. Dad raised. Shotgun. I shook head. Bullet might arc. Instead, I flung fistful of salt across the floor. The man halted, butchered by conflicting commands. Static eyes flickered. Dad and I bolted outdoor onto graded catwalk, descending into yard. Steel towers loomed, conductors crackling faint corona even in daylight. We followed maintenance catwalk to primary bus. Dad rigged first copper thermite charge, magnetic clamp snapping onto gleaming bar. Ignition fuse timed 7 minutes to allow escape. As he knelt for second charge, a gust of ozone gusted smell of burned plastic. I turned. Static-eyed linemen crawled across the yard, racks literally, limbs contorting, hands sparking each rung. Behind him, more workers shambled from Breaker House. Eyes snowed out, bodies glitched, jerky, puppets of the code. Dad, company, I shouted. Cured, charge, secure charge, signaled 3 more, and run. We sprinted along bus, planting thermite like deadly breadcrumbs. Wires above crackled louder. The yard's hum shifted into a minor key. Over speakers, reversed Amazing Grace leaked, bleeding through analog, INTERCOMS, dot, 4th charge set. 5th, near far, terminus. As Dad clamped detonator, a puppet lineman reached. Catwalk, lunge, wrench, swinging. I parried with machete. Metal rang sparks. Puppet's arm dislocated, but kept swinging. Tendons replaced by coax. Dad kicked him off platform. The body hit gravel, convulsed, then erupted in blue arc flash that leapt from ground to conductor. Ionizing air dot, the grid screamed every lamp in valley below, flickered midday bright. Countdown accelerated voice over PA, now chanting T. -5 though, our watch set, 30 minutes left. Monster, rewriting time. We finished arming last charge, timers synchronized. 4 minutes, we bolted toward exit. But static storms erupted across conductors, bolts lashing like white. Whips, severing catwalk ahead. Path blocked. Alternative, dive into cable, trench concrete channel, filled with control wires under yard. We leaped 15 feet down, rolling amid snake bundle cables. Sparks rained from above. We crawled headlong in dark, following faint daylight. At far end, behind, the puppet chorus dropped into trench, wiring writhing from their sleeves. Dad tossed shotgun shell loaded with rock salt homemade blast down tunnel. Boom, echoed, salt cloud filling space. Puppet screeched as static shorted. We pushed onward. We emerged at fence opposite van with 90 seconds on timer. Mom saw us, engine already running. We sprinted, vaulting my ditch, diving into side door as she gunned throttle. 20 yards out, thermite charges bloomed. 5 suns cascading molten copper. Bus bars sagged, severed. Protective relays upstream sensed fault, opening breakers with thunder, metal clack. Yard went dark, hum, collapsing into shocked silence. But the death row's arc found escape. A lightning bright plume of plasma leapt skyward, connecting to storm cloud above. In that blinding column, I glimpsed the shapes, skeletal, antlered, woven of code and electricity rising like ghost pulled by heaven's magnet. The bolt snapped, shape dissipated into cloud. Yard fires smoldered. Valley below blinked out every house, billboard, cell tower, winking dark. Only sunrise remained unhurried. Mom steered down service road. Powerless stoplights dangled like dead lanterns. Silence blanketed, counting no radios, no ringtones, only birds, confused by sudden hush. We reached town square. Residents stepped onto porches, staring at black screens, breath fogging though summer morning warmed. Dad explained outage with last days. People cursed utility. Some prayed, but I watched sky storms drifting east, docile. That afternoon, we Met Ed Greyhawk at library parking lot diesel truck, the only engine still running, old mechanical injection. He examined turquoise chip around my neck now. Cracked gray. Story starved, he said. Code needs current. You unplugged the world. It goes hungry. Is it dead? Mom asked. Ed shrugged. Hunger never dies, only sleeps. Sleep can be long. He handed me leather journal, blank inside. Filled pages with new stories, ones that heal, not feed shadows. I opened first page, wrote Rule 16. Tell tales that brush silence, not break it. Months later, power restored gradually. Grid hardened with analog redundancies, manual breakers, fiber cutouts. Nobody spoke of puppets or digital hymns. Official report blamed wildfire arc. We know truth, though. Sometimes I still hear faint static in pines when the wind aligns just right. But I carry Ed's empty journal and write daily about Jasper's loyalty. It's Cassie's newborn laughter, Mom's cornbread rising golden. Stories full of light, tastes bland to monsters, and I never speak my name after sunset. If this testimony finds you, heed the rules. The mountains remember every syllable, and echoes hunt for mouths to ride. If you felt the hairs rise on your neck, share this tale and subscribe to hear more truths the darkness hopes you never learn. Your voice helps drown the static, so keep the lights off, but keep listening.